Do you ever wake up in the middle of the night and think to yourself, wouldn't Pokemon be better if everything was random and nothing was permanent? If I could have dozens of restrictions placed upon my person, forcing me to struggle through every encounter and yet be entirely defeated by random luck at any moment? If I could be forced to discard all personal attachment to my team because they are merely tools and are easily replaced once they face the inevitable yet eternal reality of death? If so, you might want to see a therapist. But don't worry, someone else in this big old world clearly felt the same, and they made Pokémon Rogue, a fun mix between Pokémon's RPG elements and the traditional gameplay loop of a roguelike. And since it seemed to catch on in the PokeTuber community, I thought I'd give it a shot. This is how it went. The game starts with you hopping out of a truck in traditional Emerald style, but instead of a starting town, you land in the hub. This is the base of operations that grows as you attempt more and more runs. However, it starts very bare with only a house for settings and the Pokélab available to you. And, first things first, we're going to need a partner Pokemon. Apparently, even the starters are random, so when I looked at my 3 options, I had Bulbasaur, Corphish, and Ladybug. So I looked at my 2 options and did some thinking about who would serve me best as a roguelike companion. Bulbasaur won out in the end because I figured if he was a normal starter, then his moveset would be more balanced for the early game. So with Snitch the Bulbasaur by my side, I headed in for my first adventure. So the way this game works is that you start in a room with multiple routes and you pick and choose where you think you'd get the most resources before the League Trainer fight at the end. Each option has 2 descriptors that help you identify what might be inside the route, but ultimately it's all a gamble. I picked an average wet route and found myself on my way to the Weather Institute on Route 119. I found a wild Totodile, who I caught and named Toothy, collected some items and battled some trainers to level up my Pokemon in the fastest level progression ever seen on Earth. My next route was Victory Road, which gave me some more fights and some more items, and then I went to the Battle Prep rest stop where a guy in a green tux offered to trade my team for a completely new one. That seemed stupid, so instead I tried to buy something, but then I realized I'm poor. So after that complete bust, it was time to face my first gym leader. I didn't know who he or she may be, but with a level 15 Bulbasaur and a level 15 Totodile, I was feeling confident we had decent coverage. Plus, all the trainers we fought until now had been level 5, so how hard could this be? Okay, so my first run ended in complete and utter failure, but I learned some things. Like, catch more Pokemon. So with my once again level 7 Bulbasaur by my side, I tried again. The second attempt was actually a lot more smooth, all thanks to my first catch, Carlos the Growlithe and his ability, Intimidate. It's a lot easier to not lose health in a small battle when everyone starts the battle just a bit weaker. Oh yeah, that's important because healing is rare in Pokemon Rogue. During the routes, your only help is the items you carry with you. Sometimes, at the end you might hit a healing stop, but you are promised nothing. Even before the gym leader, you are faced with this fine, upstanding citizen who will only heal you for free once before extorting you for all of your cash. Carlos's Intimidate plus his high attack stats did well to minimize damage the team took while we worked our way to our first match. Liza, who of course started with a Slowpoke with own tempo. My luck sucks. Fortunately, Carlos's bite force is like that of a decapitated wolffish, so after some bites on Slowpoke and Ralts, and with Vista the Larvitar taking down the Natu, we had obtained our first badge. Except Vista was no more. See, death is permanent in Pokemon Rogue. It didn't matter that I won, or that everyone else was healed to full health before starting the next route. Vista had died to Ralts, so Vista stayed dead. Oh well, death is inevitable and so is the end of my grief, so let's move on! We headed to Jagged Pass where I passed on a Charmander and instead picked up Duo the Nincada, because that's practically a 2-for-1 sale right there. The next encounter was actually with a game show host, and I gotta say, I am unlucky. I got TM Thunder on my first round, but then I proceeded to lose $1,000, $10,000, and then he put all my Pokemon to sleep. To say trusting him was a mistake would be an understatement. So I decided to trust him again and trade my Shedinja for a new Pokemon. This was also a mistake. But fortunately for me, Awakenings are pretty cheap, and Norman didn't have anything too exciting. The second gym badge was mine. My next choice led me to a recreation of Route 32 from Johto, gaining me a Pichu and an Absol to fill out my team. But it was not nearly as cool as my next destination. See, this statue doesn't represent a route, it represents a strong Pokemon. A legendary Pokemon. First, I had to fight this lady who just chills in lava-filled caves for fun, but then I got to face Moltres, legendary bird of fire. Carlos was easily able to get Moltres into the red, but Moltres had Carlos trapped in a fire spin, meaning if I didn't catch this bird quickly, it was highly likely I would have to trade Carlos's life for the catch. Ultimately, I decided Carlos's life was more important, and slayed the Moltres to guarantee his survival. Then I bought a ton of potions at the mart because I clearly was not prepared for the lack of healing in this game. Next was the league fight, this time against Flannery and her fire-type team. I decided to do something a little more clever than just outright fight because my team severely lacked fire coverage. Instead, after Carlos's Intimidate, I sent out Ash the Pikachu to paralyze my opponent. Then I switched into Slade the Absol, who used Sword Dance 3 times before proceeding to critically one-shot every Pokemon on her team. Badge 3 obtained, and the seed of an idea planted. On the way to Badge 4, I realized 2 of my Pokemon evolved via Stone, and I was not finding any on the routes I was traveling. I needed to get to a battle prep rest stop because one of the guys there sells a random assortment of evolution items. Hopefully, they'd have either a Fire or Thunderstone I could use. This is where I got sloppy. I chose routes based on it ending in that battle rest stop rather than getting good encounters. I was also still in the mindset that I had my full team of 6, and this is what I was going to the Elite Four with. And that's not how Pokemon Rogue works. Everything is random and everything is escalating, so when I asked about his evolution items, of course, nothing I needed was there. My 4th fight was against Brawly, and I felt I had a clean sweep with Mrs. Mime. She was Psychic Fairy, she had the move Psychic, she had Light Screen and Reflect, but she was crit by a Stone Edge right before her victory could be assured. Sucker the Volbeat had to finish Brawly off instead. 4th badge obtained. And then I went down this route with 2 marts because I was desperate for the battle rest stop. On the way I got the Bush Encounter, which is a strong non-legendary Pokemon, in this case Sheer Force Mawile. And I love Mawile, so I was content having traded Mrs. Mime for this new member of the team. I named her Lucky and proceeded to the battle rest stop, hoping this time my evolution stones would be there. They weren't. And in retrospect, I was a major idiot because this Nurse Joy option I had isn't just healing. It's healing plus the mart plus the battle prep rest stops, so all in one. So in my ignorance, I forwent my chance at free healing and didn't even get the stones I was looking for. But it was all going to be fine. I just needed to get past the next gym leader and I could try again. I could try one more time for those god dang stones. It's you. To be honest, I did hold a grudge against Winona. First gym and she had a Tropius, it felt like she had handpicked the only flying type that was impossible for my Totodile to chip through. And now she was back to laugh at me again. But this time I had a Pikachu, and a Sword Dancing Absol, and Carlos. Surely she wouldn't have anything too ridiculous. She had a Salamance. A god dang Salamance. But that's okay, because I had Lucky, who was immune to dragon moves. And since Salamance had started with Outrage, it should be stuck outraging and then be confused. So I should be good to Sword Stance and then play rough safely. Well, did you know that Outrage immediately ends and doesn't confuse if it's disrupted? And did you know that the Fairy type's immunity to dragon moves counts as a disruption? Did you? Because I didn't! To my horror, Salamance doesn't outrage again, he gets a dragon dance off, and then proceeds to sweep my team because this isn't just any Salamance, this is a Moxie Salamance. I had no recourse other than to watch as this dragon slayed every one of my Pokemon with extreme ease, and got stronger with every kill. It was a slaughter. I'm not going to lie, I felt very cheated at that moment. I didn't understand at the time why Outrage didn't lock him into his attack, or why he didn't get confused. So I did a round to clear my head. But my heart wasn't in it, and that's when I realized I had been playing the game all wrong. I was playing this like a tough Pokemon game where I could pick whatever Pokemon I liked, and with enough effort, everything would work out. I was forming attachments and banking on the things I needed eventually coming to me. But this is Pokemon Rogue. This game is a fight for survival where your only guaranteed tools are strategy and luck. What I needed was to be bold, and maybe a little bit reckless. So I started my next run by trading away my starter for a random Grimer. Then I picked up a Totodile, a Slowpoke, and a Wooper. Next route I got a Swablu and an Aeron. My first gym fight was against Roxanne, which should have been fairly easy seeing as I had 3 water types. But she had an Anorith that caused some trouble and killed Toothy 2.0. But that's okay, who cares, we got the badge. On our way to the next gym leader, Cheeks evolved, I got a Sneasel and I picked up a King's Rock for Slowpoke. Then I faced Norman, who, after a painless fight, gave me my next badge and a Slowking. The route to the third gym had 2 curveballs for me. These 2 characters. I had no idea what either of them represented, and I was insanely curious. I needed to at least figure one out so that I would know if I encountered it in the future when there were higher stakes. So I chose the Shadow Man and proceeded, evolving Aeron to Lairon as I progressed. Turns out the Shadow Man is a dark deal, a boon in exchange for a curse. I picked the Shed Skin Charm up, and in return I now carried the Everstone Curse, a curse that prevents my Pokemon from evolving via level up. A hefty curse, but one that could be avoided by replacing my current team with evolved Pokemon. The next gym was Watson, who was a bit more tricky than I expected. Cheeks and Steven theoretically had it covered until his Ampharos came out with unavoidable Focus Blasts. So I sacked Sneasel, Grimer, and Lairon to waste the move's PP, and had Cheeks finish everything off with Earthquake. Badge 3 was mine. And you might think 3 deaths would be devastating, but none of them could evolve, so they were basically on borrowed time anyway. Now my team could grow with new additions like Tucker the Hitmontop, Nubby the Swinub, and Lavalier the Slugma, who was quickly replaced with Twinkie the Ho-Oh. With the power of a god, I had to be ready for Gym 4. There was no way Brawly could wipe me when I had 2 flying types and a psychic type. I couldn't be so stupid as to forget basic type matchups and get most of my team killed, right? Brawly was probably an example of me at my most moronic. Claudia almost got one-shot by 5-hit Bullet Seed, so I sent in Oliver the Slowking, not thinking about the first thing you learn in Pokemon. Grass beats water. Then I thought, ice beats grass, and it does! But fighting beats ice, so Nubby died next. And then my brain kicked in and was like, don't you have a Firebird that beats both grass and fighting? But in true fighting type gym fashion, his Pokemon knew Rock Slide. Then it was Tucker's turn on stage, but he died to poison in a top-on-top battle, and Claudia was sent out. But if you really think she accomplished anything in this run, you'd be wrong. This left me with only Cheeks and Earthquake, which was just enough to get me the win. I definitely didn't deserve the 4th badge. With Cheeks by my side, it was time to rebuild. I faced a strong Pokemon, Impact the Fortress, and added her to the team. Then I went into a spooky route to fill out the rest of my team with Cutie the Ariados and Ivo the Sableye. But Cutie wasn't with me for long because I traded her for a random Mon, and received a Farfetch in return. Then it was time to face Juan, but this time, I had a plan. I would send out Impact to set up Stealth Rocks and Spikes, and then Volt Switch to Cheeks or another Pokemon. That plan failed immediately when it turned out that Impact wasn't as tanky as I thought, and she also got burned by Scald. So, new plan. Cheeks Earthquakes everything. Okay, new plan. Sacrifice Aibo and Herald to heal Impact and Volt Switch into Cheeks and pray for a miracle. Which I got. But at a terrible price. Impact died in almost quite literally the next turn, and then I realized I had accidentally set myself for Battle Hell. See, Mantine has 4 moves: Scald, Defog, Toxic, and Roost. Since Cheeks had the ability Water Absorb, Mantine's only damaging move couldn't hit me, meaning it had to Toxic me. But I had the Shed Skin charm, which means I healed from my poison status quite frequently. Which means it should have been an easy win for me. But Mantine is water flying, which means my Earthquake couldn't hit it. Mantine also has the ability Water Absorb as well, so I couldn't hit it with Muddy Water either. So I was stuck using Slam to do damage. And that would be fine if Mantine didn't have Roost and Leftovers, so that it can just constantly heal itself before I make any progress. This was a battle to see which was smaller, his PP or my money. With speed-ups, this one Pokemon fight took 5 minutes to resolve. It felt like it would never end. And actually, it didn't, because I hadn't taken out the Mantine, he had just switched it out for Relicanth. I had just been reminded that the battle was still not over because Juan had 2 more Pokemon left. Relicanth only needed 2 Muddy Waters to take out, and Huntail made it easy for me by shell smashing his defense lower in time for me to Earthquake him to death. But then it was back to Mantine! And finally, after another 3 minutes of slamming Cheeks' head against a wall, I finally got the 5th badge. And I was back where I started, with only Cheeks by my side. Which is really scary because these trainers jump scare you from out of frame. But after several harrowing fights, I finally was able to add Anya the Xatu, Paisley the Hypno, and Crusher, Crushin, and Crushly the Crawdons. Why 3 Crawdons? Because I need more bodies. My next stop was a Pokemon lab, where, little did I know, an old friend was waiting to greet me. Turns out, Twinkie was alive all along, so Xatu was kicked out of the party to welcome back a god who had been on the team for 1 battle before he died. But Twinkie didn't return to me for free. I received another curse. I could no longer catch Pokemon of the same species as those within my party. But I felt confident I wouldn't need to any longer because I had a stacked team ready for anything. And just in time, because I was about to face my ultimate rival, Winona. I'm not going to lie, I was terrified of facing that Moxie Salamance again. I didn't even have a Fairy type or Ice type move. I would be banking on straight power against a team that was 20 levels higher than the last time I fought her. I felt doomed. Then she sent out a Beautifly that one-shot Crushin. Now I just feel insulted. So out went Twinkie in a blaze of glory to Sacred Fire her Beautifly, her Butterfree, her Ninjask, her Tropius, and her final Pokemon, Delibird. Delibird. Her ace Pokemon, Delibird. When she's the 4th gym leader, she has a Moxie Salamance. When she's the 6th gym leader, her team is 3 bugs, a banana tree, and Santa Claus. I had a beautiful team with coordination and strategy built in to facilitate synergy, and I get my ass handed to me by a flippin' pseudo-legendary dragon. But when I get further by being a literal dumbass, she hits me with the Goon Squad! Are you fucking kidding me? This game is bullshit! So with badge 6 obtained and only 1 Pokemon dead as opposed to 5, I was doing pretty well. On my next route, I caught Uproar the Ursaring to fill out my team and focused on fighting items and avoiding trainers. Then, I had the option of going for another legendary Pokemon, but I honestly felt like I should just go in and walk right out. I mean, what legendary is worth risking more team death? I had a pretty balanced team for once, so I should just... Oh. My favorite Pokemon is Mew. Has been since I saw the little bugger flopping on a windmill in the first Pokemon movie. If I have a chance to get Mew, I take it. Even if that means breeding 1,000 eggs to fill Pokemon Ranch, or buying an overpriced Pokeball Joy-Con I can only use for one game. I love Mew so much that they were the center of my wedding bouquet. So when I walked into that forest and saw that I had stumbled upon Mew, my fate was sealed. So I caught my beloved Melody and let go of Uproar. I taught Melody a bunch of TMs to give them a diverse move pool, and it was time for the 7th gym badge. My 7th gym fight was against Flannery, which was great since I started with Crushly. Crabhammer is one hell of a move, and now I was questioning if I would have had an easier time if I had started with that Corphish instead of Bulbasaur. Next up was Blaziken, who unfortunately took out Paisley after a switch, but Paisley's death meant a clean switch in for Cheeks, who was then allowed to wreck Flannery's whole team with Earthquake. The 7th badge was easily mine. I only had one more badge to go to beat the gym challenge. I skipped as many routes as I could, caught Bloom the Meganium, and revamped everyone's movesets to prepare for our next challenge. Then, Melody learned Baton Pass, and the idea seed that had been planted so long ago finally sprouted. I remembered my troubled past in a particular battle against Flannery where I won easily by powering up one Pokemon to take out everything in one hit. Mew already knew Barrier and Amnesia. If I could Baton Pass max defensive stats to a Pokemon who could then buff their attack to max, I'd have a tanky and hard-hitting Pokemon that would be a monster on the field. So I gave Melody a Colbur Berry to weaken any Dark-type moves they may face, and I headed into my last gym battle. Liza began with Lunatone, and I began by buffing my defensive stats. 3 Amnesias and 3 Barriers later, I was ready to Baton Pass to Crushly, who still took a big hit from the Lunatone. But that's okay, because my defense work came in handy when the Grumpig tried to Focus Blast me. Then, Medicham took itself out with a high jump kick, and I had to outlast a Wobbuffet who would only Destiny Bond. Then Liza pulled out her own Mew, and I was shook. I mean, I still took it down in 2 crunches, but giving the last gym leader a legendary is just rude. Good thing I took it out so we can get back to— and now she has Lugia? Who is this, Tobias? She switches out my Crawdaunt, taking out all my stat buffs and sends in Melody. But I'm not playing her game. I switched into Crusher and performed the ultimate Hail Mary. Crusher guillotines first try, and the 8th and final badge is mine. And I wish I could say that was it. That the journey had ended and I had triumphed. Then this video could have a satisfying ending that made me look really cool. But if Pokemon Rogue is anything, it is not forgiving. And so the journey continued. I stopped by a strong Pokemon den to see what was inside, possibly adjusting my team if need be. It was a Kingdra, which was a really helpful pickup, but it came at the cost of Crushly's life. It wasn't too detrimental, but Crushly had been the strongest of my Crawdaunts, and I was hoping he'd stay with me for longer. Then it was time for an Elite Four fight. Now, normally before every other fight, there is a Chansey trainer who will help you level up to the highest level the other team has. But not for the Elite Four. There is no Chansey trainer, there is no healer, and you automatically walk into the fight. So if you are not prepared, you are screwed. And of course my first fight was against Drake. I started with Kingdra, who took out Altaria and did good damage on Dragonite, but was one-shot by Outrage. Next I sent out Bloom to use Dragon Tail, but it wasn't quite enough, and instead it switched Dragonite to Latios. I sent in Melody and tried to reset myself, starting again with my Barrier Amnesia Baton Pass strategy, but now with a toxic element as well. Mew was able to take out Latios and Dragonite, and Crusher was able to switch in and get another Guillotine off on Salamance. Then Flygon was able to crit Crusher and end my long line of Crawdaunts for good. Twinkie and Cheeks tried to finish Flygon off, but both were unable to withstand the onslaught of Outrage. It was only Melody left, and she could withstand an Outrage just long enough to let Flygon's Life Orb take itself out. Finally, Drake only had Latios left, but Melody had stall tactics, and by using Amnesia to withstand Latios' Draco Meteors, they were able to watch Toxic whittle their opponent's health down to nothing. And so the first Elite Four was won. but at the cost of too many. Only Melody the Mew was with me now. Not even Cheeks had been able to survive. I had reached a point where I was sure I was destined to lose, but I had to keep trying anyway. In my desperation, I sought help from a dark source, the Shadow Man. I took the priority charm, hoping speed might send me to victory, but it came at a devastating cost. I received the embargo curse. I could no longer use items in battle. No evolution, no repeat Pokemon, no items. I was stuck with just a Mew and a Camerupt. And maybe one more Pokemon. I had another legendary encounter. If I could get lucky, if I could catch something powerful, perhaps that would help me survive just one more battle. It took me 4 minutes, but I solved Deoxys' puzzle and faced it in combat. And Camerupt killed it in one eruption. Hope was dead. The battle against Phoebe was not a great war cry of a warrior fighting fate to save their way of life. It was the whimper of an old dog tired of pain and ready for peace. I tried to push through and use the tricks at my disposal, but after taking out 3 Pokemon, both Bond the Camerupt and Melody the Mew succumbed to death's call. And that was the end of my time with Pokemon Rogue. After everything, I felt proud of myself. I made a lot of mistakes, but I also made it pretty far on just grit alone. I lost many friends along the way, but I also had a Pokemon experience unlike any other. In all honesty, Pokemon Rogue isn't the way I prefer to play Pokemon, but it is a fun alternative, and a challenging one. I don't know if I'll ever come back, but if I do, I'll be stronger, wiser, and maybe, just maybe, with a little bit of vengeance. My name's Gale, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye!